everything.
So as iconographer, you really don't kind of have the freedom to create it from scratch. You're working with characteristics in mind.
That's absolutely right. As an iconographer, we don't create anything new per se, unless of course a new saint comes along. But we paint from older icons so that we keep the art ancient.
Well, let's take a look at some icons. I think one of the most common, we were talking offset, are Gabriel and Michael. These are archangels. There are many ranks of angels, and they are archangels. And I have a set that you've written, as we say in the Orthodox Church. Why don't you compare and contrast Michael and Gabriel? How would I know who is who?
Typically, they will have contrasting colors, blue and red, usually. One would have blue on the tunic and red on the mantle, and reversed on the other side. In these particular instances, obviously, one's a full figure and one is not. When seen together as a set, one will hold IC and one will hold XC, which is, of course, the Greek abbreviation for Jesus Christ. But typically, reading the name would really give it away for you.
The clue. Yeah. And we can see here when you talked about some of the characteristics of facial features and iconography that you carry the same thing for human beings and angels. There's really no
and they're shown expressionless as well.
Okay. There are lots of applications of angels in iconography.
Yes, there are.
One that you've brought today to share with us is this one. This is actually an icon of, as we call her, the Theotokos, or the Mother of God, holding the Christ child. But we've got angels in here. Why don't you tell us about the application of angels in other icons?
Sure. The legend here is that Christ had angels appear to him holding the instruments of his death. So you can see the cross and the crown of thorns and the nails and the spear and the sponge. And Christ as a child was frightened by that vision. And he ran to his mother. And in his haste, you can see his slipper fell off. That's the story behind this particular icon.
I see. Now, other applications of angels. Here's another icon that you've written. Maybe you can describe this to us and what this is.
In the Gospels, unless I'm mistaken, this is never referred to specifically as Gabriel, but we take it to be Gabriel because he was the messenger of God for the most part. Gabriel appears to the myrrh-bearing women at the tomb to tell them that Christ is gone from the tomb. And you see he's shown all in white and gray, which is a little bit different from the red and blue that they're typically seen with.
And why is that?
I believe it's because it's after the resurrection of Christ.
Okay. And we have just a few moments left, but we also wanted to talk a little bit about the application of angels as others within the context. And tell us very briefly about this.
Briefly, this is an icon by St. Andrei Rublev, and he depicts the hospitality of Abraham, the Holy Trinity here, as three angels who are equal in a triangular fashion, all sitting around the table in a very equal pose. It gives us a good understanding of what the Trinity is.
Okay, so we see lots of applications for angels in the iconography of the Orthodox Church.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being with us.
It's
really
my
enjoyed
pleasure,
it.
John. Thank you.
And stay with us. We're going to go back to Quaylin Nassar and Father John Nosel to talk more about fallen angels and angels in general.
Why do the bridal couple at an Orthodox wedding go around the table in the center of the church 3 times? This procession symbolizes going through life together in permanent mutual commitment and as witnesses to the saving message of Christ. The same hymns are sung as when candidates for ordination are conducted 3 times around the altar.
I'm Quaylin Nassar, and we've been talking about angels today. And right now, Father John, we want to talk about the dark side of angels. Is there one?
Absolutely. When we look at, as I said earlier in the first segment, we always have to hold these things in full and complete perspective of the whole picture. So we know that if we feel as though there's a war being waged between good and evil, it's not between God and the devil. That's one of the first mistakes we make when we kind of raise the devil up to a level of deity almost, but he's not. So the war that's being waged right now, cosmically, all over the place, even though we can't see it, is between the Archangel Michael and the angels of heaven and Lucifer. So that's where the struggle's going on. It's also interesting to
So
see
it's
how...
going on at a different level, obviously.
Well, you know, one of the things that's said about when we look at when Adam and Eve are expelled from the garden, that they were given garments of skin to cover them. And part of what's said about that is that it's so that we don't see what's going on, because we wouldn't be able to bear it. So it's good for us to remember that that's going on right now, you know, all around us. And we ought to, in a certain sense, thank God we can't see it, because we wouldn't be up to it. Okay, so one of the things, too, about the fallen angels, though, and it's because, again, if we don't reflect on how it lets us know something about ourselves, then we're missing some of the point. When we look at angelic nature as bodiless, and we tie that into the saying in our tradition that says the goal of the Christian life is to kill the passions. So for the angels, they have no passions, because appetites, passions, come from what? Come from having bodies and having bodily needs. So we have appetites that we satisfy by what we eat,
Right.
and then we eat too much. We drink, and then we drink too much. Our brains have passions for a higher consciousness, which we in our fallen state satisfy with drugs and things like that. In our bodies, we also know that there's the sex drive that we use to procreate, which is good, but again, taken to all kinds of extremes. It's the cause of our fall. When we look at Lucifer, whose name is, you know, the light bearer, then when we consider what happens in his fall, it's a horribly tragic and unbelievable thing. And I'm going to read a little bit about that.
Before you read that, let me just ask you a question. You're there and you're talking about all of these other kinds of drives that we have and things that can be fallen. Is that an influence of a fallen angel that's happening, or is that just within us?
That's our sin.
Okay.
That's when we turn, when we fall prey to the temptation. That Lucifer,
But
the
that's
devil's
not
already on the
necessarily
scene.
being influenced by a fallen angel in that sense.
Well, except in this, well,
Sort of is.
temptation in the garden, right? But this is, and listen to the very end of what's going on here, because, you know, sometimes we ponder and we look and say, well, you know, boy, it's hard to live as good Christians. It's hard to be moral. It's hard to be. But what we pray for is always that God knows why we do what we do. We always pray that somehow it's because we don't know what we're doing, or because we're weak, or because we're in the flesh, or because of some other kind of reason. But when we listen to what we say about Lucifer, it gets very spine-chilling. This is again quoting from Mother Alexandra's book. Caught by the undeniable beauty, perfection, goodness of his own angelic nature, fully comprehended, Lucifer loved it. That was as it should be. But his love refused to budge a step beyond this, refused to look beyond the angelic perfection to its divine source. He insisted upon resting in that beauty to find there fullness of happiness, to be sufficient unto himself. As is the way of pride, Lucifer isolated himself even from God. Lucifer's sin consisted in loving himself, as pride insists, to the exclusion of all else, and this with no excuse, without ignorance, without error, without passion, without previous disorder in his angelic will. His was a sin of pure malice.
That is spine-chilling. I mean, we think of Lucifer, we think of the devil, and we know that there's all of these negative things, but when you hear it's pure malice, I mean, that
yeah,
is,
this is not just, you know,
right.
the little devil sitting on your shoulder whispering in your ear. No, this is an angelic, powerful, marvelous creature that wants to devour us.
Well, let's take it to a more positive note now and talk about our guardian angel.
Okay, so not wanting to have anybody have any nightmares, you know, after hearing some of the things that we've said so far. You know, all we can do with our existence is to be joyful thanksgivers. And if we should do anything, and if we're called to do anything in our church's tradition, it's to be awake. And what are we supposed to be awake to? We're supposed to be awake to reality as it is. So that means that everywhere we go, our goal is to be able to carry in the Holy Spirit an acknowledgement and a thankful attitude toward all around us, which includes these marvelous beings that are given to us. I mean, again, ranging all the way from the throne of the God right down to with me right now, who's going to drive home with me and as I go home in my car.
So when were they given to us? When is that guardian angel given to us?
When we're born.
And stays with us forever.
That's what we believe.
Okay. That,
And maybe most importantly, if you remember that first prayer, when we die.
Right. And when we die,
as a guide,
to
because
be
it's
there.
going to be territory that we're not all that familiar with, many of us.
So we only have a few moments left, but what should our relationship be with our guardian angel?
Love. God's love.
Well, that was
It's always the answer.
yeah. If you were to look at our not only our relationship
You were
but how
hoping
angels.
for something longer, weren't you?
I was, but that's okay. I think that was poignant enough. But if we were looking for, or just talking about our entire relationship or how they fit into our lives, what would you say about angels?
Okay. When we think of what it means for things to be providential, it means that we recognize that God, before all time, before creation even began, has already seen everything that will happen to us, and how that's being orchestrated, and how that's being laid out for us, and how we're given the choices that we in our free will do make. A large part of that is what our angels do with us.
And so the key thing too is that those angels are around us. I think hopefully as they are here with us in our studio, they're going to enjoy or feel that we've done a good job in talking and sharing about that.
Once again, please, if we've misrepresented too badly, please forgive us.
Or we get bonked in the head. No, actually, thank you very much for explaining angels in such a wonderfully understandable way for all of us who have our guardian angels right beside us on our shoulder. Thanks for being with us.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Angels all around us. What a comforting thought. Kuei Lin, what should we take away from our discussion
Well,
today?
it is a comforting thought, and I think the first thing that we should remember is that angels are created and they have free will, and indeed angels are everywhere, which I think is you're right, very comforting. Sort of reminds me of the City of Angels movie, and that also that we've been given a guardian angel, and that it's our job to cooperate and to work with that guardian angel.
Wonderful thoughts, wonderful ideas.
It is.
We hope you'll continue to stay with us, and we hope you'll listen to Orthodoxy Now Wednesday mornings at 9:30 a.m. on WEDO, 810 on your dial AM, and watch us here at Orthodoxy Now, Christian Associates Channel 95 in the city of Pittsburgh, or Comcast On Demand. If you have topics you'd like us to cover or questions you'd like to ask us, you can write to us at the address on your screen, or email us at www.orthodoxynowtv.org.
Thanks for being with us.